What's happening, folks? It's your boy, Jack Slack here, for a very brief pre-event breakdown. Most of you will probably only see this like Sunday morning, so I'll already be wrong. Double fun, but I like to half keep my promises. And if you've been keeping up with me, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. I ended up having to do a load of rewrites for an Italian version of Notorious, which basically just ate up all my time. So all the projects that I have halfway finished, I've got, I think, 3 history episodes on the go now, and various articles and shit that I wanted to get done, put on the back burner while I did that. And for me, it's like the reverse of a training camp, doing rewrites or doing any sort of writing to a deadline, because I don't most of the time. Most of the time, I've got a fairly easy, I've got a week, I'm going to write about this, I'll just dip in and out of it when I want to. But when I've actually got a proper deadline, serious work to do, it's just chocolate and tea and sitting stationary, feeling miserable. So that's what I've been up to. But I decided I wanted to get something done about this event today, and I'll probably do a little 5-minute ramble after this and splice some Crocop footage over it, because if you haven't heard, Crocop had a stroke, which is just horrible. I'm one of the dudes who've been like, I don't really want to see Crocop anymore for quite a while, but I'm not going to say that he's not a legend. The dude's a legend, and by all accounts, an awesome guy. I always, whenever anyone asks about Crocop, I always think of that clip of that Croatian TV anchor bad-mouthing Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, and Crocop just cuts across and goes, hey, let me tell you about Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. He was run over by a tractor and they said he'd never walk again. And he just slams this guy. It's absolutely brilliant. And obviously, like, his day job was being anti-terrorism police or whatever. Something where he runs in with a gun every day. It's one of those guys like Brian Stan or, Thiago Santos was a paratrooper, wasn't he? Just these dudes who, like, fighting is not going to be scary for them. They might get nervous and they might fuck up because of nerves, but they're just like, their day job is so much more difficult, or at least scarier. But yeah, we'll talk about him later. I'll do a little ramble and I'll edit some footage on it. It'll be a little technical thing, like the Francis Ngannou thing I did last week or the week before. But in the meantime, let's talk about this event. UFC 235, Jones versus Smith. Jones versus Smith is the hardest one to sort of get excited about because it's John Jones, and he's incredible. He's on the juice. He's got a lifetime built-in excuse for juicing. People will jump in and be like, you just don't understand the science. No one does. Like, it's all based on one paper written by one guy whose test study was himself about the pulsing this is. It's this bizarre situation. How does the metabolite stay in your system if you're not metabolizing anything, and so on and so forth? But aside from that, aside from the enormous picogram assault we treat his career with, he's one of the best fighters ever. And Anthony Smith is a guy who was a bit of an also-ran at middleweight and then came up. However, that's not enough to write you off. Kelvin Gastelum and Robert Whittaker were also-rans at welterweight, as I always point out. Going up in weight can give you, you'll be good chance of being quicker than the guys above you. You're going to be probably better conditioned than the guys who are cutting tons of weight. Because Jones has a fairly big weight cut. That's part of the reason everyone's always been like, he should be a heavyweight. You can't say that if someone's making the weight, but clearly he's cutting a lot of weight to make the class. So, who knows? Maybe Smith gets him late. Famously, the Gustafsson fight was, a lot of people saw that as, Jones himself claims that he didn't take the fight seriously. If ever there was a fight he wasn't going to take seriously, I imagine it'd be this one. But what I like about Smith, there's a lot to like about Smith. He's a very to-the-point person, but he's also very thoughtful in what he says. So he's been quite fun in the fight week. Just being like, I know people don't give me a chance, and then slamming Luke Rockhold when Luke Rockhold's like, yeah, I'll go up and get a title shot. But what I like about him is he does have craftier strokes to his striking. He will look for sneaky elbows and like stepping stone right hands, palming the left hand with your right and then skipping it over the top to crack him with the right hand in the jaw. He's got a few clever little things that he does. My problems with Anthony Smith have always been that he doesn't do the clever things often enough because he doesn't really drive a very high pace, or certainly he didn't at middleweight. Whereas his most recent fight at light heavyweight was a case of dealing with a very scary light heavyweight and outlasting him. I think his chances against everyone in that division would be greatly improved. Aside from like old men like Rashad and Shogun, who he can just murder, I think his chances against elite guys would be greatly improved if he could drive a higher pace. Gastelum's an amazing example in the middleweight division because he drives a high pace, and when you drive a high pace as a smaller guy and you're striking, the thing is like, but then I'm giving them opportunities to take me down. And Gastelum's whole thing is like, I just keep getting back up, and they have to keep taking me down, and it gets very tiring for both of you are going to get tired. But if you're in better condition, you've got that window, which could be like 2 minutes, it could be like 2 rounds, where you're going to be in better nick than them to do the fighting. So I think I'd have more faith in him if he had, put on, shown more ability to put the pace on people. Because Jon Jones is not the kind of guy who's going to punch himself out. He's the kind of guy who will only kick you in the knee when he knows it's just the right time to throw off your step. He's not going to be like throwing wild shit at him. He's just going to be picking at him. Expect to see that exact same thing from both the Teixeira fight and the Gustafsson fight, where he goes for the single leg, the other guy digs the underhook, and he immediately comes up and cranks the arm. Because if you're dealing with a guy with a scary right hand, why not just tear their labrum apart first? Like if you've got a fucked up shoulder, it's going to be hard punching people. And if you can do that in the first round, terrific. Where I'm interested is Smith's jiu-jitsu off his back. Obviously, Jones, very good takedown artist and good at generally getting past the guard, but also vicious work from within the guard. It's been a few years since we've seen him do that a lot, really. But takes guys down into close guard and does the Greg Jackson special. Can open a grip, but not actually focusing on the can opener, and then either stacking up into them or staying on the mat and turning over elbows. And he used to just brutalize people with that. But I'd be very interested to see what Smith can do off his back, because if you can play a good butterfly guard or variations of butterfly guard, a good half butterfly guard, you might be able to keep him from getting set to throw the elbows, force him to stand up, and then you've got options of leg entanglements or coming up on a single. I'd be very interesting to see if he can keep Jones working as the man on the bottom. And, we don't get to see that an awful lot nowadays, but Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee is a great example. Obviously Tony Ferguson was doing good work in the stand-up too, but managed to make the other guy work more while he was on the bottom. Another great example from history that the UFC has done well trying to erase, Frank Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz. Frank Shamrock went into that fight with the goal of playing guard or going straight to the turtle and then the stand-up, the wrestler-style stand-up, and just making Tito take him down over and over again or work to pass guard, which he wasn't great at. I think on the feet, I think Smith's chances get better as the fight goes on, but again, Jones is very good at picking at people and stopping them whenever they want to get something going. I've always been a big advocate of low kicks against Jon Jones, with the massive caveat, of course, that it's very tricky to low kick against a guy, or a traditional low kick against a guy who's looking to grab your leg, or has the threat of, if you are low kicking him, he can just go, well, we're going to the mat now. I didn't want to, but you've made me. So I think the two mitigating factors in that are don't kick outside low kick, as in if we're both standing orthodox, right leg into the thigh. Go inside low kicks, left leg into the thigh, because Jones stands very wide and long. And there's a good few clips of like Rampage Jackson and people like landed like every low kick he threw, knocked Jones out of stance on almost all of them, but didn't really use them much because he's Quentin Jackson. But yeah, inside low kick to knock the leg out, which works quite well. And if you can follow that with a right hand or an uppercut, a right-handed uppercut, all great. You could build stuff off that. Or the inside low kick into the jab, very effective point scoring and eye closing combination. Or the outside low kick, but the low kick. Go in at the shin. I mean, you've got a good chance of hurting your own shin. But if you watch something like Jeremy Stevens versus Gilbert Melendez, where even if they check, you can't lower your knee and the top part of your shin. So if they're already kicking below that, all you can do is pick your leg up and get like smashed across the ankle as they kick. So that's always a great kick for anti-wrestling, or rather kicking wrestlers. So yeah, fun stuff that he could be working there. I'd love to see elbows from the bottom. If he ends up on the bottom, elbows from the bottom and butterfly hooks, and just keep shrimping. Keep working a knee in, keep trying to make distance and stay off the fence and don't get stuck there. For Jones, any way you want it, really. He could pick at him from range and use kicks and stuff, or he could move him into the fence and just beat up his body. I love watching Jon Jones work the body along the fence. I think that's one of the areas in mixed martial arts where he is leading the charge. Guys should have realised by now that that's such a good position to score free body shots from. There are so many guys out there who are like powerful wrestlers, have a good punch, love a body shot, and they'll show you the body shot in training. I'm thinking of Tatsuya Kawajiri while I'm saying this, but then they have this area where they could be body shotting anyone, and they're just focused on holding on to them. Anyway, let's move on to the more interesting matchups. I said this would be 20 minutes, and I'm already 10 minutes in and talking about the one that I didn't care about. Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman. Well, this one I more aggressively don't care about, but I did one big article for Unibet, but they've sliced it into 3 because they prefer to do it that way, which I will link in the show description on YouTube, so go check that out. They're on Unibet. The first one was focused on Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman, and I said in this one, I just sort of contrasted their wrestling styles. Woodley obviously stands on the fence and shoots to the center, which is a way to deal with wall walking by trying to make it a non-factor. Kamaru Usman is a straightforward guy, and he just keeps people at the fence, so he constantly has to use a lot more different takedowns than Woodley when he just does his one shot straight out into the center. But he has to deal with guys constantly using the fence to stand up. There's a few where like he got Rafael Dos Anjos down by turning him off the fence with a single, so Dos Anjos was facing towards the center of the cage again. But a lot of the time he's just reaping a leg or dropping low on like that short double where you just put them down to their butt. Those are the sort of things, that one especially, I don't think is going to help him much against Woodley. We'll talk about that in a second, but he does a lot of things where he puts the guy down and they're next to the fence, and they immediately, if they're good, like Dos Anjos or Leon Edwards, they go to the fence and they use it to stand up. So his process is a constant one of dragging them back down, which is kind of like Khabib, but he throws about a third as many punches as Khabib. So there's a lot of sort of holding, likes little elbows on the break, and when he gets his striking going, he's good with volume and feints and things, the stuff that could annoy Tyron Woodley as sort of like a minimalist counterpuncher. But the thing with that is like, well, you saw it with Darren Till. If you can't get the feints going convincingly, and if you take a big gulp before you step in and punch for real, if the feints don't look like the punches and the punches don't look like just feints, you're not really confusing them at all, so you're not going to benefit from any of that. And when you're faced with someone as scary as Tyron Woodley, power-wise, it's very hard to be convincing. You know, it's a mental thing more than a technical thing. But where I think Usman will struggle even if he gets it into his best area, which is along the fence, is that I don't think Woodley is going to be beaten in the hand fight too significantly. You know, Usman does very well, same as Khabib. And I was watching Khabib versus Conor the other day, and Conor did a great job. You know, people don't appreciate it, but if you stop them linking their arms around you in the body lock, that's a lot of their best takedowns and control taken away. So he'll have the single underhook pin or like the 50-50 position, either Usman or Khabib, but Usman in this example. And if guys stall out their hand like Leon Edwards did at several points, he can have real trouble, and then they can circle into that space, whip down the collar tie on that side and get out. What he did against guys who were beating him in the hand fight, like Edwards, was just drop on like a short double leg and put them to their butt. And I don't know if that's going to work against someone with, you know, the kind of base and hips that Tyron Woodley has. So if he's beaten in the hand fight by Woodley along the fence and he can't get anything going that way, if he drops on the hips, I just don't see him taking him down. I can see him, you know, eating a lot of elbows and things like that. But it'd be very interesting. I think he's got tools that, you know, as scrappy as his stand-up is, I think it's got tools and elements in it that could trouble Woodley if he has the confidence to get it going. Because confidence is a huge factor when dealing with feints and volume. I think one of the key areas, like I said in the article, but I think one of the key areas to watch is the breaks from the clinches. You know, at some point, presumably, if it goes any distance, you've got to expect there's going to be a clinch that gets broken, as in someone circling out rather than the referee breaking them. And on that occasion, Usman looks for elbows quite often. He'll like give dudes breaks to try and elbow them, and he doesn't always land them cleanly, but he really clearly likes the elbow. Woodley has done well breaking with elbows, but he also does well breaking with just like short right hands, and I think that'll be very interesting. You know, you could get into a situation where both of them do it at the same time and hit each other. But hitting on the break is such a great area, another great area for wrestlers as strikers. You know, firstly, bodywork along the fence when you're posting your head in, and striking on the break. You might as well just grab hold of people in order to knock them out, you know, when they try and shake you off. So Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren, and then I think I'll talk about... Oh no, I've got two more that I really care about on this card. Even though it's a very good card up and down, to be honest. But Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren, I don't really have an awful lot to say about this, but for me, this comes down to what's left of Robbie Lawler more than how legit is Ben Askren. I mean, Ben Askren, I think he can give a lot of people in this division. I think he can probably ragdoll a lot of people in this division without any striking. But I think, when you consider Johnny Hendricks, a great takedown artist, perhaps not as accomplished in pure wrestling as Askren. I can't remember their actual stats, but I don't think he ever went to the Olympics. He might have won more titles than Askren. Who knows? Some dudes on my timeline know, and they'll correct me, I'm sure. I'm actually inviting that. I'm not. That sounded really bitchy, but I do actually want to know. But Hendricks had the threat of the huge left hand and the takedowns, and he still struggled to get Lawler down. He had to add in like combinations into low kicks, worked really well. And Lawler was still almost impossible for him to take down at many points, and he was so good at getting up too. That was one of the big things about Lawler coming down from middleweight to welterweight again. He was really good at getting off the floor because he'd been held down by guys like Tim Kennedy, and he was using this butterfly guard to get up really well. But what I really liked about Lawler's second fight with Hendricks, and I think something that could really help him here against Askren, even though Askren does sort of chase in behind his face a lot when he gets frustrated. The Sapo fight is the one I'm always thinking about, because Sapo's the only guy who's really given him a test. In recent years, at least. I can't remember much about his early Bellator run. But Robbie Lawler really punished Hendricks in the second fight by getting to his body. It's one thing being like, I'm an amazing knockout artist, but Johnny Hendricks could take a shot at that time. So what Lawler was doing was like he'd post off the bicep and get his head in position whenever Hendricks closed to clinch, and then he'd slam in a couple of knees to the body, and that knee to the body from that sort of like sideways angle with the overhook or the underhook and the head posted and the free hand posting on the bicep, that's one of the best body strikes in MMA, in my humble opinion. But he was also doing things like when Hendricks was chasing a single or like clinging to a single, he just started elbowing him in the kidneys, which is horrible. Like, they don't allow you to punch the kidneys in boxing because it's debilitating. For Askren, I think the interesting thing is that Lawler has always been sort of an anti-wrestler. At his best, he's been an anti-wrestler. A guy who trained with Matt Hughes, and trained with Matt Hughes for years, and was Matt Hughes' like chief training partner. So he can stop a shot. I mean, Matt Hughes wasn't as accomplished as Ben Askren, obviously, as a pure wrestler, and he probably wasn't as technically savvy. I've been watching the old Askren brothers instructionals today, and they're just so clever, both of them. Like, you look at stuff they're doing and they go like, well, no, if I do it this way, he can get that back. And if I just start slightly ahead of him by putting this here, he can't get anything back. And you're like, wow, no wonder you are so good. I've never seen this in however long training grappling and wrestling. It's just that, like, at some point, it is always a problem if you don't have a means to close the distance. Shooting from across the ring doesn't work at the highest level anymore. And by the highest level, I mean with the really, really good guys. It still works at the low levels of the UFC. So it's a tiny percentage of the population, but those guys are not going to fall for long, low singles and shit like that. The one shot that Conor McGregor stopped from Habib was when he got tired and dived after a low single from too far away. And Askren did that against Sapo. He was just sort of diving by the end. It wasn't like walking in and punching and going for takedowns. He does like a slappy left hand and duck on the leg, but most of it was just diving. And Sapo did a really good job actually judoing him, just turning him over into like mount and then scrambling out as Ben tried to come up on a leg or something. Sapo hit him with a really good knee to the body actually in that fight, and that's another reason that I was like, yeah, Lawler, go for that lots. I mean, the temptation for Lawler will of course be try and hit him with the uppercut or try and hit him with a jumping knee, because you're Bob Lawler and that's the shit you do. I think digging to the body and being safe first of all is probably the best approach. The southpaw right hook is Robbie Lawler's best punch, and if you watch Askren's fight with Sapo, he was just asking for it at every point in that fight to be check hooked. He was just chasing after him with both hands out in front of him like a zombie. So yeah, I'm very prepared for Askren to just take him down and control him for 3 rounds. I'll be very impressed still, because Robbie Lawler might be in the twilight of his career, but he's still Robbie Lawler. But for me, again, this fight seems to be more about what does Robbie Lawler have left than just how good, begs the question, just how good is Ben Askren? Yeah, it's more about Robbie Lawler than Ben Askren in this fight, I think. But, the coverage will, of course, be all Ben Askren. Robbie Lawler's been sort of an afterthought in the build-up to it. Cody Garbrandt versus Pedro Munoz. To be honest, I think Munoz is probably going to struggle here, because Cody Garbrandt, as dumb as his performances against TJ Dillashaw were, especially the second one, he can still get by on just running at people and bombing them out of there. Like, that's why I thought he didn't have much of a chance against Dominic Cruz back in the day, because he just ran at people. Like, he was like, I want to throw a left hook now, and he'd just run in and do it, and he'd smoke him. But, against TJ, he got caught standing there too long, and against Dominic Cruz, he really did show a brilliant game plan, which we had no inkling that he could do before that. And now afterwards, we're all like, how did he do that? But I think Pedro Munoz is a slow guy. I think he's probably going to get caught with some hard shots here. But he does hit quite hard in his own right for a bantamweight. He could probably come back with something hard. So, he's the guy with the amazing guillotine, but you don't see him snapping down dudes to get it too often. It's always guys shooting on him. So, very interested to see how that goes. Don't really have much more to say about that. It should be, Garbrandt getting back on track. But Pedro Munoz is exciting in his own very slow kind of way. And then Jeremy Stephens versus Zabit Magomed Sharipov, or Magomed Ben Sharipo is what someone called him the other day. But this is an interesting one. This isn't like the best in the world, but this is getting there. And it's really like, I said in my article, again, check the articles, I said that Jeremy Stephens exists to sort the chaff from the grain at his weight class. You can beat him, and he can be reliably beaten in the same ways, but you have to be one of the top guys, and two, willing to change your plan. Like, you can't be one of the top guys and just go head to head with him. Aldo did to an extent, but Aldo was still fighting pretty smart, and he's a very slick guy anyway. But you're not going to have fun if you just like try and wing it against Jeremy Stephens. So that's why I'm looking forward to this one, because if Zabit can just do whatever he wants, that'd be really impressive. If he can just like spinning kick with impunity, put himself back on the fence and all that stuff that he does, the bad habits, that'd be impressive. But Zabit's wrestling is probably going to make the difference. The interesting part of this, of course, is Stephens is, he's been taken down a lot of times, but he's also, against guys like Frankie Edgar, he's stopped 10 out of 15 takedowns, and against Dennis Bermudez, who only wanted the takedown, he stopped 5 out of 5. If you don't have the striking, if you're not comfortable striking with him, Moicano got him down, I think it was 2 out of 5 times or something like that, but every time it was because he convinced him he was striking first, and he had been striking for the most part. If you can't convince him you're going to strike, he knows you're going to wrestle, and that's when he's really dangerous. So if you can use both things, they work really well together against Jeremy Stephens. But as soon as you start relying on one too much, provided you're not like massively outstriking him, it gets a bit dangerous for you. Obviously, Zabit's bad habits are desperately looking for a counter at any opportunity, so he's a real sucker for feints. If you feint a shoulder at him, he'll jump into a back kick and miss. And his other one is that he puts himself on the fence a lot, and guys will get double underhooks on him, and he'll turn them off the fence and then like throw him by double overhooks, because he was just so much better than these guys he's been facing. But giving up those kind of positions against the best guys, typically gonna, you're just starting with a handicap in every exchange there. What I love about Zabit, of course, is that he's a continuation of the Ben Askren and Khabib Nurmagomedov thing, where we try and get guys to turtle and we go for the wrist ride rather than the hooks and so on. Just looking to control a wrist from every position. There's a thing that Zabit did against that guy he anaconda'd, which I've been doing quite a lot of no-gi nowadays, which is if you get mount and the opponent locks their arms around you to try and stop you from posturing up. A lot more common in MMA because guys will try and, guys don't want you to punch them in the head. But you swim your top leg over so that you're in like knee on belly, but instead of going to proper knee on belly, you slide the one that hasn't, the shin that hasn't gone over the body, you slide it inside their body lock and pin their arm to the mat in a mounted crucifix. And I've had so much fun. Like anytime someone grabs me around the waist for a mount, it's not a very common reaction in like no-gi grappling, but it's more common in MMA. Anytime someone grabs me around the body from mount, I'm just like, yes, I get to do my Zabit thing. So as much as I shit on him for his fan base, and people just losing their minds over spinning shit when you're like, that's not really what you want to be looking at, he has taught me some very interesting things that I've been using. So that's good fun. But yeah, he's a continuation of that, looking to get the wrist all the time. And it's very interesting because in BJJ and BJJ into MMA after that, ever since Marcelo Garcia came along, the thing has been get the seatbelt for the most part. One arm under the armpit, one arm over the shoulder from the back. Because if someone like Marcelo can get that, they can stay on your back constantly. Problem is that it sort of locks you to their back, and you only really have the option of either going for the choke or pursuing the hooks. And even if you get the hooks, if you slide off at some point, or they slide the arm over your head, over their head rather, they can turn into you and you're in full guard. Whereas these guys who are focusing on the wrist ride, they can just keep hitting dudes, stay free, mobile, tilt them off to the side, throw them back down into side control, whatever they want. You keep the guy working and keep him in danger and keep hitting. And the interesting thing is that both positions can be set up in a very similar way. You just, from the turtle, if you haven't got any grips or anything, you just pull the opponent over consider them like a box, and whatever, one of their shins, the one that's nearest to you, you just pull them over that edge. They'll put a hand down to try and stop themselves being pulled over, and then in jiu-jitsu, that's where you throw in the seatbelt, but in wrestling, that's where you take the hand and drive back into them. Very interesting to see how the meta is shifting in that regard. But then the rest of the card, you've got Johnny Walker coming in at short notice. Amazing. Cody Stamann versus Alejandro Perez. That's a one to watch for me. Diego Sanchez versus Mickey Gall. We all hope Diego Sanchez smashes him. And then, yeah, it's just a fun fucking night of fights. So that's about, I've done half an hour. There we go. Apologies for not getting this out sooner. Like I said, I keep half my promises, or I half keep my promises. I'm your boy Jack Slack. Support the Patreon. There'll be new Patreon stuff coming now that I actually have time to finish my stuff. Thank fuck. Trying to do more independent stuff at the Fight Primer. Might do less pieces a week, but might do a big Killing the King or a big study of someone. I'm just looking forward to getting back to my own shit, to be honest. Just being me and fabulous. And if you have an email to send to the podcast, fightsgonepodcast@gmail.com. I'll have a little Crocop thing coming shortly after this, I imagine. So I will catch you soon. Cheers.